Hey everyone, welcome to the Sports World podcast. I have Matt Dangler with me. He's in Florida. So, Matt, I know there's a tropical storm heading your way, so hopefully you're safe and sound. But how's the Florida life?
It's good so far. Haven't really made it outside much due to the rain, but past Tuesday I should be in the clear.
Yeah, you're sending Dennis the Menace, the tropical storm, over our way up north. So
I think
thank you
that's
for
what it's
that.
called. I said that earlier. I'm going to verify, but I think that's right.
Okay, but no, what wasn't a menace? Usually, like our ever since we've done these videos and kind of have the Sports World account single entry ones going, this has pretty much been our best performance, I would say, and this happened on last Friday's MLB Bunt single entry. Obviously, the winner was Elko Chico, whatever, 1971. He had 278 points, and ours was only 50 points behind at 218. I know on YouTube, Matt, we got a commenter who saw the video for our lineup on Friday, this lineup, and he said, nice job on the Seager pick. So that was pretty well done. I think you were totally responsible for that because I thought Seager against Taharan, so I completely didn't like look into it. But what made you pull the trigger on Seager? What was your research saying about him that day?
Well, he had come down from about 4,300 or 4,200, and that was a nice little price drop. He's still the same hitter. He's been good. Taharan gives up a ton of home runs to lefties, as he showed in that game. Gray's bullpen isn't good, and it just all kind of lined up for a good play. I mean, it's easy to say it was a good play, and on paper it was, but he made it look like an especially good play by having a phenomenal game. So thank you, Corey, from
Yeah,
your state, from NC State.
yeah, from North Carolina. Yeah. So what did the Echo Chico Lico did? That guy, what did he do right? Adrian
Pomeranz was a
Beltre
good
was
pick.
pretty impressive, I thought. At 41 points out of 3,800. I mean, 1.6% ownership. That's pretty much the chair to the top, I think.
Yeah, that's exactly the same as our Seager with 6.8. Uh, Beltre is an even more extreme example of that. It was a good pick.
Hmm.
Uh, we actually had Matt Kemp in our lineup for a while, just at the end because we didn't have a guy playing, so we had to change some stuff around, and we probably would have had him in as well.
Yeah.
But Cespedes was fine. Rasmus was good. He had actually a relatively similar lineup. I really liked the Pomeranz play. I played him in a couple tournaments because Colorado's anemic away from home.
Yeah. That's interesting. Like we paid way more for Thor, and obviously that was a great choice. I don't regret any of it.
Yeah.
But Pomerantz was much less expensive and ended up doing a little bit better. So that's always nice to see. And I think that might happen tonight, actually. So let's move on to tonight's pitchers and stuff, and kind of make the roster. So it's the 12K Monday MLB Bunt single entry. Matt and I are about to make the lineup for it. So let's get started with pitchers. I think so. On Friday when we picked Syndergaard, he was the best pitcher on the docket, I think, and we paid the most for him. We got 54 points, which is exactly what we thought he would do, or the sort of the average of what he would do. But tonight, I think there's better options than Lester that could not better in terms of safety net, but better in terms of ceiling. And Fulmer is one of those guys that was on my mind in terms of just the last three starts. He's had a pretty good performance, putting up almost 50 plus points for the most part, and going 7 plus innings as well. So the ability to go deep into starts, which is a trademark of Clayton Kershaw, he's latching onto that, and the points and just that kind of production is also there. Even if at times the strikeouts aren't there, he still put up 44 points and got the win. So Detroit Tigers, they take on the Toronto Blue Jays. So as Matt and I were discussing pre-podcast, that was the only kind of drawback that we had is the Toronto offense is having a WOBA right now as a team of 273 or 278, and last year in 2015 they had not a WOBA but a BABIP. Yeah, the BABIP in 2015 was 298, which is right around where the league tends to operate at. So the Blue Jays are underachieving this year, and this might be the day where they kind of progress back to the mean in terms of BABIP. So Matt, I know you and I had discussions about Shoemaker and Fulmer, so convince me on Shoemaker.
So mainly the difference here is the matchup. The Yankees are a much, much, much worse offense against right-handed pitching than the Blue Jays. They haven't been good all year. They've really struggled lately. Their lefty bats have had just not good years. McCann's had a down year. Teixeira's had a down year. Ellsbury's had a down year. The only one who, and Gardner's had an especially down year. The only one who hasn't is Carlos Beltran, and he's better from the right side. So they have lefty bats to throw at you. They're just not that great. The downside here is that they don't strike out. They have one of I think the third or fourth lowest strikeout rate against righties.
Yeah.
And that's not a good recipe for success when you're playing in DFS when you need strikeouts as that safety net and that upside.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess I would say they're similar. Schumacher has more safety while Fulmer has higher upside.
Okay. So.
But again, if you're playing in a 50-50, if you play anyone but Lester, you should be shot because he's safe. It's the Phillies. They can't hit lefty pitching, and he's actually not as expensive as he could be in such a good matchup. You have to play him in 50-50s.
Yeah, and he's going up against Cliff Lee 2.0, Mr. Adam Morgan, so it should be a fun night because that guy in particular will stick around for like 3 innings and look better than Lester, and then all of a sudden implode in the fourth. So I think it's going to be a pretty interesting game just to watch as a fan. So I'm going to go ahead and lock in Lester on both of our behalfs, but I don't think Matt and I like either of the options down here. You may do well and maybe pick Friedrich here for the Padres. He's going up against the Braves, so maybe a risky play, but low owned, and he could have a 50-point night. So always, a threat for that if there's a pitcher against the Braves. But really, at the top end, these are the three that we had in mind: Lester, Fulmer, and Shoemaker. I know Matt said that Matz was a really good option, Steven Matz here, but there may be a rain delay in New York, so potentially not a good thing. And Chris Archer has been pretty much terrible, even though he's been a good pitcher, like just historically. But against Arizona, it should be a tougher outing for him. So catchers, I think there's a decent amount on hand. I do like Evan Gaddis. I've rostered him the most, I think. But Victor Martinez for $600 cheaper may be the better choice, I think. J.A. Happ is pretty much a gas can right now, even though he's a gas can in disguise because he's putting up these deceptively nice actual stats, but we all know that he's about to regress pretty hardly. So I don't mind at all picking Vmart to take on Happ. Vmart has a 352 batting average and just 70 hits already, 9 home runs, so the power is there, the contact is there. Recently, the last 10 games have been pretty good for him as well on the whole. So, Matt, do you have any other objections other than to Victor Martinez?
Nope, he's my favorite catcher for sure. I'll say a couple others that I like if you don't want to spend so much.
Yeah.
But I don't think there's a better play than him. It baffles me how cheap he is. I don't know what he's done to deserve a 3,100 price tag.
Yeah.
And Gaddis with a 37, but I know he's been great lately, but take over the course of a year, he's just not the same hitter. But a couple cheap ones. I guess my favorite cheap one is David Ross. While he's pretty old and he doesn't hit for a ton of power, he's actually really good against lefty pitching.
Mm-hmm.
And Philly is a solid hitter's park, nothing amazing, but he seems to catch Lester most days, and he's only 2,200. And if you really need someone cheap, he's a good idea. But if you even don't want to pay 200, 2,200, you could play Tyler Flowers for 2,000. He tends to bat cleanup for the Braves against lefties, and he's actually a good lefty hitter. I'm not sold on Friedrich, although he wouldn't be someone I would be opposed to targeting in a tournament. But if you want someone that you just don't want to pay anything for, Flowers is a solid play.
Yeah, and just recently we've seen San Diego, just that park itself, put up a ton of runs. Not the park itself, but like the teams playing in the park have put up a ton of runs. So I think against all odds, the Braves could have a big night just because of the Petco Park effect, which is almost on par with the Coors effect. So I actually don't mind spending $2K for Tyler Flowers. I wasn't considering him, but every time I've personally rostered him, he's done well. I rostered him against the Brewers right there where he had 28 points. After that, he went a little bit cold, but against Friedrich, it might be a good option. So let me just make sure at the top there's nobody that... Yeah, I don't know. I want Martinez. Is that okay?
I want Martinez.
Okay.
But these are just potential other options.
Yeah, I just... No, no to Flowers. But first baseman... Anthony Rizzo leads the kind of leaderboard in terms of price, but do you think he's the best option on the night?
Not with a couple three really good other options a little bit lower. He's facing a lefty. He's still good against lefties. It's just not worth paying that much for a lefty-lefty matchup. I like a guy that you mentioned many times and somehow has continued to absolutely destroy the ball, Mike Napoli.
Yeah.
He's probably my third favorite option. The reason I mention him here is because of how insane these numbers are. I don't know how he's doing this, to be honest, but it won't continue forever, obviously. But it's not a bad idea to ride him while he's hot. But my two favorite players, maybe my two favorite players in the slate actually, are Cabrera and Hosmer. Both 3,600, both underpriced, both good matchups. I don't know how you get someone with these two players' talent for so cheap, especially Cabrera. But look at Hosmer. Hosmer's facing a terrible pitcher, just awful. Mike Wright is awful in a hitter's park. He has a 433, I think, WOBA against right-handed pitching, and it's a recipe for success. So either of those two guys are absolutely phenomenal today. What are you thinking?
Yeah, so Hosmer has been like the guy that I'm not rostering for whatever reason because I'm too busy rostering Napoli every day. So it's just like I don't look at him. But thankfully, every time I'm rostering Napoli the past 5 days, Hosmer's been a little bit colder than him. But he had a great like 5-game stretch, especially against the White Sox a week or so back when they had to win a 4-game series and the Royals ended up doing pretty well in there and I think took the division lead in the process. And now he's cooled off a little bit. But if there's a night to just kind of rebound back to where he was, it's tonight against Wright of Baltimore. So I like him as well. Basically, my ranking was Cabrera because he's the better hitter just historically. He was 1 for me. Hosmer was 2, and then Napoli was 3. And really, there's other options as well, like Goldschmidt against Archer. Not the best of options, but Archer's been a little bit streaky this year. So if he has a down night early, like the Royals pounced on him, pounced on Archer a start back. So if the same thing happens in Arizona, that he could do well. But with Arizona, I think one guy that I did want to bring to your attention when we get to him was Jake Lamb at third base because I think he could have a decent night against Archer, who does like to pound the strike zone because of all the guys he allows on base. He has to get outs and stuff. So when we get to third, Jake Lamb could be a good option. But at second base, who do you like?
I think my favorite would probably be Ian Kinsler. I know I keep recommending Tigers.
Yeah.
But he's a good option facing a lefty. Probably my favorite combo of price and ability is Ben Zobrist at 3,400.
Yeah.
But I think that's probably the best available option if you can afford it. But I don't think we're going to be able to because we've already spent so much.
Yeah.
So two guys I like cheaper are both Rangers second basemen, actually, Profar and Odor.
Mm-hmm.
It depends which one leads off, who is my favorite, but they're both in good matchups. They both have speed and power, and they're both underpriced for the level of ability they bring.
Yeah, and I guess Fires, like both of them should do well. But what's the situation in Texas in terms of like Odor comes back, so they both play the same position, so how did they squeeze them into the lineup?
I think Profar played short yesterday.
Oh, so Andrews gets kicked out.
I believe so. I'm not entirely sure. But they both did play yesterday. Odor batted fifth. Profar stayed in the leadoff.
Okay.
So basically, whichever one bats leadoff is the guy I would like to target the most.
Yeah, and Odor, before he threw a punch at Bautista, he had a pretty good season going. I mean, 268 is a little bit bad, but like he had power. He was doing things like 32.1 here, 18 here. So not consistent by any means, but he did have like the high ceiling kind of nights every once in a while. So Odor's not a bad option either. Yeah, I think I agree with what you said. Maybe not so much on Kinsler, but Profar, because you've been rostering him recently and have success over that, I thought he was a good option to have. The options at the bottom end of this list, like Darno, there's a one night in Pittsburgh where I rostered him and he did well against Friedrich. I think it could be another good outing if he gets the start, which he usually does.
He will. He's my favorite cheapest option. Gordon Beckham, their normal second baseman, is on the DL, so Darno is a guaranteed spot, and he'll probably bat second.
Yeah, so then the question is, if we both like Darno, do you think he'll do better than any of the top end guys? Could he do potentially better than Profar?
Possibly. I wouldn't say yes, but based on their price, he would probably have more value.
Okay, so then question two is, can we spend down on Darnold and still have enough money over here to make bigger choices?
A little bit, yeah. There's some good plays. Outfield is pretty easy tonight.
Okay, so let's just go with Profar because he's been the better like player just the past 10 games or so. At third base, like I said, Jake Lamb was somebody that I was actively gonna look into. 2,900 for him, still 270 batting average, but the home run potential is there as well. So hit a home run a couple days ago against the Cubs. Has been doing it periodically, like every 2 or 3 games he has a home run. So tonight could be the night for that as well. Do you want to go ahead and roster him against Archer, or are there better options that you have in mind?
There's definitely better options, but for the price, it depends on what you want to do.
Yeah.
So at the top, there's two phenomenal options. My favorite two on the day, Chris Bryant and Evan Longoria. Bryant is in a plus matchup against Morgan, who is the worst pitcher on the slate, probably. And he he hasn't been amazing, but he's already hit 7 home runs off lefty pitching in only 61 at bats. So that's something that's pretty remarkable. Just for a second, go to Longoria's game log. I don't know if you've been following what he's done.
A bit. Oh, I wasn't following the 50.
The last 4 games, he has 5 home runs.
Wow.
And he's in another amazing matchup in a hitter's park
Yeah.
that I would expect to continue his hot streak.
Let's go with Mr. Longoria. I did like Chris Bryant. I just never considered Longoria. I don't know why that happened, but yeah. Any hesitance on Donaldson from you? Because Fulmer could be a decent pitcher tonight.
I just wouldn't target hitters against Fulmer, despite because you just never know. I mean,
Yeah.
he's shown the potential. But I wouldn't go out of my way to target a Toronto hitter, but I wouldn't also go out of my way to target Fulmer.
Okay.
It's one of those kind of mixed areas.
Yeah. So, uh, Chris Bryant's funny because I actually thought he was better than Longoria until I saw Longoria's recent stats. But if we just approach it like they have done nothing up to this point, this is game 1 of the year, and you have a fair idea of what these two guys have done up to this point, who would you pick?
Still Longoria.
Still Longoria. Okay, so let's go with him. That does leave us with a little bit of shortcomings at the rest of the positions, but there's areas where we can drop down if we need to. Shortstop, I don't know if the top end options here, like I mean, obviously Machado could be decent here, but and Seager as well against Colorado. But I think because of our price, we need to look at the bottom end of this list. And one guy that kind of brought up in my mind was really there's not that many options here that are good, especially because Tulowitzki was injured and stuff. But uh, like I thought Nick Ahmed did well recently. Like there's a stretch of time when he wasn't completely terrible, but yeah, no, we can't have him. So obviously, like I think what is gonna end up happening is we could go for maybe Ramirez or Gregorius, even Iglesias, who's basically a contact hitter. He's had a decent past 4 or 5 games. I think Didi, who you like to roster, has been a terrible, terrible entity, basically a non-factor. Alexi Ramirez
So if you're looking for someone here, there's some good options. Javier Baez is a good option. Facing, he batted 5th yesterday. He had a home run. I rostered him. He should be batting 5th against Morgan again. So that's an interesting one. Taylor Motter's an interesting one. He should bat 2nd against a lefty because Brad Miller goes out for the platoon split. He hasn't been good, but he's been cheap and is in a nice batting order spot against a bad pitcher. So those are 2 good ones. I do like Iglesias, though.
Yeah.
He's a solid option.
Yeah, so obviously I didn't know about Iglesias, or not Iglesias, but about Baez until you pointed him out. But he looks pretty good, and if we are considering Mater at 2,400, then I'd rather spend 200 more and get Baez. But does he always play, or is it like finicky in that point?
He always plays. It's always where he bats is the question.
Okay.
And lately he's been batting 5th against lefties. You never know with the batting order, but we can hope. And if it doesn't, we can drop down to someone else.
He would have to be there because you have Fowler, Hayward, Bryant, Rizzo, and then so why is Zobrist not at 5th?
Well, Zobrist batted second yesterday, so I don't remember who sat.
Okay.
But it was someone, I don't know if they were hurt or sat.
Okay.
But it was I think Hayward actually got benched yesterday.
Okay.
Because it was a lefty.
Yeah.
And it's a lefty again today, so I'm kind of expecting the same thing to happen and Baez take the outfield spot.
Yeah. The only reason I'm like, if we're gonna like predict where he's positioned, if Zobrist starts, I think Zobrist gets the 5 hole unless it's one of the top 3 guys are out. Then he gets 1, 2, 3, assuming Rizzo's not out.
Yeah.
So if it is Fowler, Hayward, Bryant, Rizzo, and then Zobrist at 5, then I think 6 to 9 is kind of unpredictable because you have Soler, Addison, Russell, and Baez, who are all righties trying to compete for 6, 7, 8. So
Yeah, so Soler doesn't play unless Hayward's out.
Okay.
And so basically it's going to be Addison Russell at 6th or Baez at 6th, and then the other one at 7th.
Yeah, and if it is
Which is
Addison
not
or
bad.
Javier, I think Baez gets the nod over Russell.
Yeah,
Okay.
against the lefty.
Right. Yeah.
That's my
So
logic, at least.
yeah, no, same. So I'm glad we had a time to deconstruct what Joe Madden does when he tries to put these rosters out. But at the outfield level, do you want to spend really highly for one guy? I don't know how much we can. Like, let's for example lock in Trout. Yep, not possible. So I think it's more gonna be like 3,800. Yeah, 3,800 allows us $2,000 guys.
Is that what you want?
No, so which is what my second half of the question was. Do you just want to do all bottom tier options? Kind of like
I think
equal
there's
footing?
a lot of good options around 3,000, 3,300
Okay,
that I would be fine with at least one guy and then maybe 2 cheaper ones.
okay. So who are you looking at?
So around that price, I like, probably my favorite would be Steve Pearce.
Okay,
He's, again, I keep going back to Tampa Bay, but I really do think they're going to put up a lot of runs today. They're projected for a pretty high total. He's an outfielder for the Rays who hits lefties amazingly. He has a 532 WOBA this year against lefties. I think 7 home runs already.
8.
He's just now coming, 8, against
8.
lefties.
Oh, against lefties, yeah.
And he doesn't hit righties at all, which makes his price depressed from where it should be based on his production against lefties. So he's a good option. I like Colby Rasmus a lot. Oh, always now because he's so low priced and facing a pretty mediocre righty.
Yeah.
I like Kane actually.
Lorenzo Kane.
Yeah, another option that's been pretty poor, but we all know how good he actually can be.
Yeah. Yeah, and especially against Wright is his name, I think.
Yeah,
Yeah.
in Baltimore.
Yeah, this is gonna be fun. So I do like that idea. I think we should have one Royals guy. So ideally, what I want to do is this. Here, let me move you a little bit out of the way. So Kane, and then I like Mazzara as well against Fires, who's a righty. It's a lefty-righty matchup again. Mazzara has been killing it lately, so he could do well. But there is Pierce you mentioned as well, and Mazzara. Is that a good outfield in your mind? Kane, Pierce, Mazzara.
Yeah,
So is there
can't
any?
afford it, but
Right, we can't afford it. So here's what I was thinking. Do you want to take Lester out? Because if we do Fulmer,
So the
that's
worst thing you can do in DFS is
take a
change your
pitcher out.
to
Yeah.
accommodate hitters.
So this
So
is
I
a
would
learning
say-
point for everybody. I'm not a complete dummy here. Just trying to set Matt up.
But again, if this was cash, you would
Yeah.
never do this. But in a tournament, it wouldn't be the worst thing.
Yeah.
I would prefer trying to drop down at third or more at second,
Yeah. So
or
let's
catcher.
yeah. So let's attack second. Second, I think our option was Darnold against
Darnold.
Friedrich. That saves up a little bit more money. But are you set on that outfield, by the way? Like
I'm
if,
not necessarily. No, Well, the reason I say no is because there's a guy that I like also
Okay.
a lot at outfield instead of Steve Pearce, who should be leading off for the Rays.
Okay. Who's the other guy?
So there's 2 options that may lead off. The one I think will do it is Mikey Matuk. He's been pretty poor this year, but just trust me here. He was really, really good against lefties last year.
Okay.
He's 2,300, I think.
Oh, okay.
But,
Never heard of the guy.
So he hit, I think. Let me check, so I can back this up with some statistics. I have my spreadsheet up.
Yeah.
He hit lefties to the tune of a 404 WOBA last year with a 333 ISO in 88 plate appearances. So it's just a relatively big sample size. He hits lefties well. He should be leading off because Brandon Geyer is out on the DL, and he let off yesterday after that happened.
Okay.
So playing him allows us to take out Pierce and just change Darno.
Okay. Over here. So I'm getting the sense that Matuk is more of like the Kiki Hernandez kind of type. Like
Yes,
every time
exactly.
there's a lefty, you roster Kiki. Every time there's a lefty, you roster Matuk. And hopefully, if they're higher up in the batting order, which both guys are, if the matchup is favorable, it ends up working out for them. But do you like Mazzara? Because that was my choice, and I don't know if you had him in your research.
I actually didn't, but while you've been talking, I've been looking at him and I really like him. Fires
Yeah.
is not a great player. That is way too cheap for Mazzara, for his power and ability levels, and yeah, definitely, absolutely like him.
Okay. He
I played
could
him
get
against
cold
Seattle
though.
the other night, and
Yeah.
that was nice.
Yeah, and usually like just outfield we need like points from those guys as well because like just in terms of like a regular baseball team the defensive contributions of an outfielder are pretty rare. So like you can get a guy like Hayward, but usually they need to be offensive minded, and I think these three should be able to cut it, especially Kane versus Wright. Baez I like, Longoria I like, and especially with us having to spend 11K on Leicester, I think it's a pretty balanced out roster. We got top end, top tier guys like Martinez and Hosmer and Longoria, and Kane up to a level 2. We got mid tier options in Mazzara and Baez, and also low tier options that could do well or just completely combust in Darnode and Matuk. So hopefully a pretty good night for daily fantasy. Matt, do you like the roster? Can I lock it?
I do, I'd say, yeah, definitely.
Okay. Any
I think this is
go ahead.
actually cash playable as well.
Yeah. Yeah, not too risky. Just two other like risky propositions, which was Darnold and Matuk. So I think
Yeah.
you would make that in a cash lineup as well because a cash lineup tonight will probably have Leicester 50% of the time or more. So this may be a favorable lineup for you guys to put in. So Matt, thank you for joining us. I'll put you back on center stage. Everyone else have a good rest of the day in terms of daily fantasy and just real life, and we'll see you tomorrow. So.